Hey guys, what's up? It is week 401, and let's just hop right into the reviews. The first one up is from Radiance Films. This is from 1958. This is from pretty much infamous, and I don't mean that in a bad way. He's very prolific, I should say is the proper term. Seijun Suzuki, and this is from Nikatsu. And it's not a Nikatsu erotic films, which I usually cover on this channel. It's Nikatsu in the 50s. It's kind of action films and whatnot. This is a black and white one. Seijun Suzuki did direct a lot of art films that I think people will be familiar with. Arrow put out a lot of his work, some of his artwork, like Kojiro, and stuff like that. Really interesting director. And he is interesting in making kind of a studio picture as well, although I think this one has a little bit more to offer than just your standard studio fare. There's nothing wrong with that. But Underworld Beauty. So the plot is basically we have our kind of our lead here. He's just recently released from prison. He is with a crime family, as most, kind of criminals are. And he had stashed some diamonds before he got arrested, and he hides them in the sewer. Like, a lot of the film gives it like the hiding the sewer, the dressing. It has like kind of like a film noir kind of thing to it, but I wouldn't call it a traditional film noir at all. In that kind of vein or anything. It doesn't really follow all the tropes necessarily. So what happened is during this robbery, his partner got injured. He got crippled. And the guy's been struggling since he's been in prison. What he wants to do is get the remaining diamonds and sell them and kind of, set up, a fund for his buddy, his friend, his partner. He talks to the old crime bosses, and they agree. So what they do is they set up a meeting with the foreigner to sell the diamonds, but a group of bad guys come and steal. Bad guys within the bad guys come and steal the diamonds from them. But what happens is our crippled guy who refuses to give the diamonds up. He swallows them. He gets knocked off a building, and he eventually gets put in a hospital where he inevitably dies. This guy has a sister who's kind of a wild card. She goes out and she parties. She does some nude modeling in the 50s for this kind of strange artist who kind of ignores her. He's really an awful kind of person and character, but she's just kind of a wild kind of character, really strange for the time, but I really enjoyed her character. So what happens is our criminal here feels obligated to try to get those diamonds to his deceased partner's sister. This complicates things because the criminals that set up the whole thing were in on the kind of robbery, which is pretty obvious from the beginning. And it complicates things as well when we realize this artist who likes to draw nude art and works on mannequins and stuff is also after the diamonds. So they've kind of pushed the boundaries a little bit here when you kind of think about it in the 50s, kind of desecrating a corpse. But it all comes back to who's got the diamonds. There's going to be some double crossing, and the entire film ends in a great big shootout in this awesome kind of like a building that gets closed off, and it's actually really well done. They set up a lot of bad guys so you know who they are. A couple familiar faces. Seijun Suzuki had a film put out by Radiance Films not too long ago. And I can't think of the title, which was a completely different film for him. This was more of a criminals trying to escape into the secluded kind of area. Not for him, I guess. Compared to what I know, I'm sure he's done hundreds of movies that are similar to that. But and one of the actors in that who plays kind of the boss of the coal miners or whatever, the foreman is in this one, and he's really good as kind of a sleazy little kind of criminal. The main kind of characters here, of course, the main criminal and the criminal's, the partner's sister, who really steals the show. She's an interesting character. She does what she wants. Also has the backdrop of a lot of, American sailors being in the environment at the time. But Underworld Beauty is shot really well. It's acted really well. And there's a really nice special feature on here. There's a couple actual features that I definitely think are worth mentioning. Interview with Mizuko Kodama. This is kind of a look into the movie where she talks about a lot of characters, at the time. They have this term in Japan, she says aromantic or romantic, which it's not like gay characters necessarily. It's characters that don't really fit into the gender types and everything like that. So I guess you say non-binary, trans, gay characters, bi characters, non-asexual characters, all kind of and done in this. And she kind of codes this kind of main character as that, as a kind of unique, different style character, and goes into her history a little bit and talks about her playing kind of similar characters and stuff like that. That's interesting stuff. And then we also have a bonus feature by Seijun Suzuki's Love Letter, and this is about about a 40-minute, I guess you'd say short, if it's under 45 minutes, technically a short film here, about this woman who falls madly in love with this guy who is in the wilderness. He has an illness, and they're writing love letters back and forth, and she works in kind of a nightclub, and there's a singer interested in her, and it's got a kind of a love triangle and everything like that, and some maybe like some different things. I thought it was going to initially go a little bit more progressive at the times, but it's a solid little kind of love story, well done in black and white. But overall, this is a solid release here. We also have an audio commentary. Don't want to lose that. Sorry about that. I always want to make sure. New English translated. Interview, bonus feature, audio commentary by William Carroll, and I think that one is actually just on the short film. But then we also have limited edition booklet featuring new writing by Claudia Sefin Leitich and newly translated archival review. So AB locked, but a beautiful black and white movie by a very prolific, interesting director in Seijun Suzuki. Check it out, Underworld Beauty. Okay, this next one is also by Radiance Films, and this is called Weak Spot from 1975. And this is like a German-Italian-French co-production here. And it's actually directed by a German director, Peter Fleischmann. But it's a very Italian film. If you guys know, a lot of Euro money came in and all these kind of things like this. But predominantly the cast is all of, Italian names. The big name for me is Mario Adolf, who pops up in Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Major Dundee, a lot of films, a lot of Fernando de Leo, or a couple crime films of him. Really solid actor, very memorable actor. And the other two, the leads here, are also fairly known actors. Ugo Taganazzi, and the other one here is, I want to make sure I get him right, Michele Piccololi. The performances by the three leads are all fantastic. And there's a thing about, Italian films, and I'm going to call this mostly an Italian film here, although it's directed by a German. It has money from everywhere because a lot of it takes place in Italy, all that kind of stuff here. People always associate Italy with their genre films, their horror films, their spaghetti westerns, their sword and sandal films, and poliziotteschi, Eurocrime films, and they should. They're great. They're fantastic. But one thing that Italy did that I think are absolutely fantastic are their crime films. And I know you're like, but that's the poliziotteschi, and I wouldn't really call that. I wouldn't call this in the same vein as that, or something like A Man on His Knees in the same vein, or a Citizen Above Suspicion, or Confessions of a Police Captain. I don't feel like they fit in the same genre, or Day of the Owl. I think they're a little bit different. And I think they fit more with a crime drama instead of a Euro crime kind of action film deal. And this definitely fits in that. This is definitely a crime thriller. So essentially what happens here is we have this guy who's seemingly, I don't know if it's an affair or not, but he's with a younger woman, and they seem in love, a very sexual relationship, and he leaves, so she's got to do things to do, and he goes throughout the day, and he ends up stopping at a bar, getting a beer, kind of midday. Guy steps on his shoe, and they have a small exchange, and he just forgets it. At that point, these bunch of agents grab him, and they take him down. And this is like a big kind of time when a lot of like political turmoil and stuff, and terrorist groups are around. So it's kind of in that vein. And there's a lot of like untrust of the government and a lot of stuff going on, very intense stuff. I should mention the film actually opens up with the suicide that in one shot that's beautiful and really well done and choreographed and everything, with all the police carrying and moving around the agents and everything, and you kind of learn the kind of craziness and the stress that these guys are under. But so they take him in and they say, you're this secret agent. They blame him for all this stuff, and as an audience you're completely confused. You're like, he can't be. This guy's handling himself particularly well too. He stays incredibly calm, and what they tell him is, you're going to go down to headquarters and all these kind of things like this. We need to take you for a car ride with these two agents, one in Mario Adolf, who's very intense, very kind of, just bombastic and loud, and stops for drinks and just yells. And the other guy is supposedly like a quiet guy who has marital problems, who's an expert shot, all that kind of shit like that. And so they have this dichotomy, and you're like, is this like a complex game of good cop, bad cop? And before long, they kind of separate one, and there's some card trouble and all these things like that. And they keep exposing layers and layers and layers. And you're thinking, in layman's terms, you're like, it can be two ways. He can actually be a secret agent. He cannot be a secret agent. But then it goes a little bit further than that. And it even goes a next step further than that, where it's all kind of a weird kind of game, and you don't know who's set up and what's going on. Beautifully well shot, beautifully well acted. It keeps the tension. You're thinking, well, if this was just a movie with these kind of characters walking around and stuff, how can it really keep your attention? Because you're always constantly guessing, you're always wondering what's going to happen, and you're also intrigued in this world that they make. Weak Spot is just a really well done crime thriller, and these movies are really well done, and the acting is exceptional, the characters are exceptional, the psychology is exceptional. I really enjoyed the characters. Mary Adolph, at first I was like, oh, he's going to steal the show, and he does for the first half of the movie, but as it progresses, these other two guys come in, and I'm just like, oh, there's more focus on them, and I'm like, oh my god, these guys, it's so like nuance and small detailed performances and things like that. But love this movie. Weak Spot, great stuff. As far as the special features are concerned, we have audio commentary by Travis Woods, archival TV interview with Michael Piccolotti. Piccolotti, I'm sorry on that. Discussing Weak Spot soundtrack, expert Lovely John discusses the Ennio Morricone score, which is really good and hard and hitting and tough. Good score. Newly improved English subtitles translation, reversible sleeve featuring designs based on original posters, limited edition booklet featuring new writing by Kat Ellinger. There we go. So yeah, very cool. Great release. Not heard about this movie. Like, there's so many good, great films out there that not really are mentioned. Italy has almost like an endless supply of great movies. I mean, not endless, but a lot of films that are kind of passed by for a lot of the horror titles, which I love myself, and I'm guilty of doing that myself. But Weak Spot, great stuff. Check it out. Okay, this next one is super interesting, and this is from Liberation Hall, the label here. It is a region-free Blu-ray, and this is Shelf Life. This is directed by legendary cult actor-director Paul Bartel, from things like Eating Raoul, Death Race 2000, Private Parts from the 72. Just a great director, really interesting director. You guys might know him if you're more associated with horror films. He pops up in Chopping Mall with Barry Warnoff and Piranha. You know, they were always kind of like a comic duo in films after Eating Raoul kind of put them together. So brilliant comedic actor, also a brilliant director, a very kind of strange director. And Shelf Life was a lost film, and it was kind of newly discovered and remastered and put out. And this is a wild one. Now, when you think of movies where people are kind of trapped in an area, right? You have like Trapped, which is a 1981 film. We Are the Flesh is another film which I think is very similar to Trapped. And when people are trapped in an environment, they kind of create their own worlds. Now, the plot here is in 1963, they see the JFK assassination, this family, and the father and mother take their 3 kids and themselves and go into this bomb shelter and close off. We fast forward 30 years later, mom and dad are now dead, and the 3 children are grown up into strange, weird kind of man children. And you kind of see through psychology, it's a weird study in psychology that how these people developed, obviously teaching from their parents, obviously not having any interactions with other humans, and having very limited outside sources pop in through a television that's static and pops in with an occasional thing here and there. The 3 lead performances are really strong. I mean, they carry the whole movies. They're very manic and weird and crazy. It's a strange world, you know, and they created it in this cellar, and you can really see it. At times, it's darkly comedic. Other times, as it progresses, at first it's very funny, and you're like, oh, this is very, you know, kind of charming and weird and endearing, but there's always that underlining kind of disgusting idea that there's these 3 people living in this bomb shelter and not understanding how to carry out, you know, human conversations anymore, and if they are even human at this point, really. I know they're human, but if they're so far gone. Olan Jones is in here. She's kind of a cult actress. She has a very small role in Natural Born Killers. It's a acquired taste, if anybody remembers that opening scene. She's in a bunch of films as well. The other 2 actors are really solid. They've done work. Don't recognize them nearly as much as Olan Jones. So really, it's just kind of a 3-hander here. Oh, well, you can't really have 3 hands now, can you? Three kind of actors here carrying this whole thing, and they do a tremendous job. And as it goes on, you can see that some of the characters and actors start to kind of manipulate each other in a really weird kind of way. I just was really impressed with Shelf Life. I think that as a Lost film, it's great, and I hope we get 100 more Lost films this good. But Paul Bartel definitely has that weird kind of charming quality about it. And with a lot of these kind of like hidden dungeons you find where people have been trapped down there, I just wonder, you know, it's portrayed as a comedy, but it's really dark. If you have any idea, just think about it for a little bit. I know in '98 there was a movie called Blast from the Past that had Christopher Walken, and why am I forgetting the poor guy's name from the Mummy movies? who just had a resurgence lately. He's also in, of course, Encino Man and stuff like that. He played Curious George, George of the Jungle, not Curious George. Oh, geez, why can I not remember his name? But it just slipped my mind. I normally remember it, but yeah, he is also in a film like this, and it's just weird that this one is such a bizarre one. It has definitely that weird indie '90s tint. I would recommend checking out Shelf Life, especially if you're a fan of Paul Bartel. As far as the features are concerned, American cinema. Cinematheque, I can't think of that place like there. Q&A with Olan Jones, Andrea Stein, Jim Turner, and Alex Mechanic. Moderated by Grant Moniker. Q&A with Tina, Pam, and Scotty, 2023. Audio commentary with Olan Jones, Andrea Stein, Jim Turner, Philip Holohan, and Alex Magnek. Trailer, teaser clip from Chain Reaction. So, yeah, incredibly bizarre film. Definitely worth watching. Very short too, and I think it needs to have a short runtime because it's being in an isolated location, but they still handle it really well. Check out Shelf Life. Okay, we're going to talk about the last two films in the Shaw Brothers set, and the first one up is Buddha's Palm from 1982, and this is one of the latter day Shaw Brother movies when they were kind of getting completely unhinged and crazy and just kind of, it's like, do they stick to their bread and butter and try to make something and make more money, or do they just go completely weird and bonkers? And they chose to do the latter. So this one is weird. I guess you'd say it's a wuxia film because you have the traveling swordsman and doing super heroic moments, but it's also I think it crosses the line into almost weirdly fantastical, more so than the other ones. I would say this movie's almost more fantasy than martial arts at times. And it has like that kind of like, I feel like sci-fi bend coming in there for sure. So the opening sets up this kind of classic, almost folk tale about this mountain where we have this guy who is learned from God's fire, and this guy who had all these special powers, like 8 kind of styles to teach. And everyone was bothering him, and I guess it put him into death, and he died, and his main pupil was angry at this, so he lashed out at everyone and started killing everyone and fighting everyone. And so what we have here is these kind of 4 warriors that decided to stand up against him and have this giant clash at the mountain, and it's been epic and crazy. And now a lot of these people, God's fire has disappeared since, he's never been seen, and a lot of the other kind of swords of swords and all these other people have moved on and whatnot. And we kind of flash to modern times, and we have this young man who's not a good fighter, doesn't know how to fight, and he's in love with this woman, and her father refuses to let them get married because this young man can't defend against the villains that this clan that they don't like. So she chooses to marry someone else, of course, and this breaks his heart. He ends up having this scuffle with this man who she married. He gets knocked off this cliff, and this domo creature, this kind of weird flying creature, saves him and brings him to his master, which is God's fire, who's now blinded. God's fire tells me, listen, if you get this golden egg, basically, I will teach you these kind of 8 styles. So he gets him this golden egg, he takes it, heals one of his eyes, he starts to teach him, and he kind of goes on this mission and moves forward. And before he gets the gold egg, he runs into this guy, East Island Chief, who must announce his every time he's there, he announces it. And this becomes one of the most comical, funny characters of the film, one of the best, most endearing characters of the movie. And he says, "You're my student." We look at, he's goofy and weird and bizarre and very funny, and he talks about how he was late to the battle, or he would have beat the God's fire and all this kind of stuff like that. And he's always late. He's always strange. And he takes him as a student as well. And things get completely crazy and out of hand, where he ends up helping these young warriors, and to help them get their chiefs their masters like help to clean her face up. And she was one that was in a battle and her face is damaged. She does not still like this young man that's learned from God's fire, so she tries to kill him. It gets really complicated when we realize that God's fire's tired of all this fighting. He comes up and says, "Let's unite. It's been too long." And they have this old history, and all of them get along, and there's these secret children and all these kind of things like that, and all these kind of crazy stories. But of course, somebody's still is kind of in the shadows from this old battle, and he's picking people off left and right. What ends up happening is this giant big fight against everybody and this one bad guy, and there's some sadness that happens, but it ends on such a completely goofy, bizarre note that you're like, this movie is insane. It's on purposely insane, purposely different, purposely fun. It almost is like one of these kind of weird crazy like space operas mixed with I'd say martial arts film. Really weird, really entertaining. Buddha's Palm is good stuff. I would check it out if you like the bizarre and weird fantasy Shaw Brothers movies. It's not cheap either. It's got a lot of beautiful stuff, a lot of fun fights, a lot of cool characters, and I gotta say East Island Chief is definitely my favorite. The actor who plays him is in a bunch of these movies. You'll recognize him right away. As far as the special features, of course, we have new restored uncompressed Cantonese, Mandarin, and English mono audios. Then we also have brand new commentary by critic translator Dylan Chang, which is really cool. Alternate English title sequence for Buddha's Palm, and yeah, so I'd really recommend checking out Buddha's Palm. Just look at the cover here and tell me this is not cool. And there's this like really weird, bizarre, like cute creature the entire movie over here down there, Domo. But check it out, good stuff. Okay, the next one is The Bastard Swordsman, the last in the set here. And this one is, I guess you'd say, a little bit more traditional Shaw Brothers, but it's still a little bizarre and crazy. What we have here is, of course, a bastard swordsman, unfortunately. He's a young man that has no, obviously, he's basically used as the whipping boy of this school, this whole village. They make him run around and carry targets, and they obviously try to hit him and things like that. He has a crush on one of the students, the only female student here, and she tries to be nice to him, but it doesn't really help him very much. And he's just sick of being bullied. He's sick of being picked on. He's sick of being abused. And what happens is it starts to get really kind of crazy when the chief here has to fight this bad guy who I don't remember his name, but he's the obviously he does not. He's like the other school, the bad school, and he teaches a weird villainous kind of technique. Like, so he's beat him the last 2 times they fought, and he says, "Forfeit or fight me." And this chief doesn't think he can beat him. And he says, if I beat you again, I'm going to have to kill you. He beats him up, he wins, and he says, I'll give you guys 2 years to train, and anybody can't beat me, I'll come and kill your entire village. So sets up pretty horrible bad guy there. What this guy doesn't really, what this school has that nobody else has is they have this technique that's kind of hidden called the silkworm, which is completely insane when you eventually do see it. How could you not? That is, they keep it from other people. But this one younger guy ends up helping the chief. He seems like a heroic type against these kind of 4 bad guys, like that are really stylized, awesome bad guys in this kind of tea house. And there's this big battle and everything like that, and he ends up being kind of taken into the school because he loses a lot of his family in the process, and he ends up next in line to be the chief. A lot of people start ending up killed. Of course, there's going to be some traitors, and our bastard swordsman's been learning by a secret ninja. It gets really crazy. The bad guy you think's going to be the bad guy isn't the bad guy. The 4 kind of crazy, I guess, elements is what they call them in the film, look amazing. They're really stylized, and you do see a lot of crazy weapons in Shaw Brothers, but sometimes you see there's a lot of bad guys that stand out, but I think these 4 stand out amongst a lot of other characters really well. The Bastard Swordsman is a really solid, cool, martial arts film. I would recommend it. Very entertaining, and you get very angry at the school that our Bastard Swordsman comes from. They're just not good people, honestly. For the most part, most of them are scum. But he does the right thing, I guess, if you're that kind of guy, a good guy. But as far as the special features, we have newly translated, where is it at here? We have brand new commentary by martial arts expert Frank Jin, of course. So that is the 12 films. How many films are actually in here? I don't want to mix up here. So going over the set again, we have One-Armed Swordsman. I'm not going to rank them; it's too hard. One-Armed Swordsman, which I'd really recommend. Really enjoyed this one. And then we have The Return of the One-Armed Swordsman, which I also really enjoyed, even better than the first. And then we have The New One-Armed Swordsman, which I think is a step back. Losing the lead in that film really hurt it. Lady Hermit is really cool. That's the next film. And then we have Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan, which is one of my all-time favorite Shaw Brothers films. A very great film directed by Choi Yun. And a great exploitation kind of Shaw Brothers thing. We have 14 Amazons, which is a great epic war film. Solid film, of course. The Magic Blade, which is also one of my favorites in the set. I think directed by Choi Yun as well, starring Tai Lung. Just a really kind of horror-inspired Shaw Brothers film with tons of baddies. Next, we have Clans of Intrigue, also a really cool film. A lot of kind of mystery and everything, and poison. Of course, lots of poison in these films. And then we have The Jade Tiger, which really actually broke my heart in the end of the film. Just an amazing kind of film with a lot of people twist and turns, almost like a Shakespearean one for sure. Sentimental Swordsman, also interesting one. Great lead performance by Tai Lung. And what else do we have here? Then we have Avenging Eagle, which I loved. A great group of bad guys, not told in linear fashion. Very interesting. Fu Shang and Tai Lung. And then we have The Killer Constable, which is filmed 100% like a horror film. One of the darkest Shaw Brother movies I've ever seen. Not one lick of comedy in it. Just great stuff. And then we have Buddha's Palm, which is the total opposite. A lot of comedy, completely insane, fun movie. And The Bastard Swordsman, which I just talked about. Also a good film, good martial arts kind of style film. And let's talk about the bonus disc, disc 9. Disc 10 is in here, and it has a bunch of the music from the Shaw Brothers. Now disc 9 has a bunch of special features on here, which I checked out. We have a new presentation of the rare Korean version of Killer Constable with newly translated English subtitles featuring over half an hour exclusive alternate footage was never released outside South Korea before. Contained standard definition VHS inserts for unique material. Newly filmed appreciation of director Choi Yoon by film critic and historian Tony Raids. That's very good. That's 40 minutes long. He really dives into it, talks about him a lot, his career, his life. Interview with stuntwoman Sharon Yen on Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan, filmed in 2005 by Federico Ambrosini, who does a bunch of the features on here from the archival stuff. That's interesting as well. She gives in Intimate Confessions, it's props, of course. Appreciation of the Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan from academic Su Man Hung, musician Kai King Chung, and filmmaker Clarence Folk. That's interesting. He directly talks about having his interaction with Choi Yoon and meeting him and all this kind of stuff like that. Interview with actor Tai Lung. They also talk about it being like Hong Kong's #1 cult film. Interview with Tai Lung recorded in 2004. That's good, interesting. He speaks English in that interview. Talks about his career, taking it seriously, and seems like a genuinely good guy. Against censorship, thank God. Archival interviews with Choi Yoon, actors Yoon Wong and Ching Lee on Magic Blade. Appreciation of Choi Yoon's career by film historian Sam Ho, filmed in 2003. Interview with screenwriter Sees Tu-on on The Magic Blade. Interview with Ku Fang on Avenging Eagle. Interview with Eddie Ko on Avenging Eagle. So tons and tons of features on here. It's also tons of stuff. I would really recommend checking out the Shaw Brothers Volume 3. I definitely want to dive into 2. I never actually did watch any of the ones in 2. I know Boxer's Omen for next year for 1983 is going to be a trip, and I want to watch the Shout Factory Shaw Brothers sets I have, and the Chang Chi set I have, the Tai Lung one, and the Brave Archer. Just so many movies, so little time. But yeah, great set, loved it. Okay, this next one here is a Canuxploitation film from 1986. This is Abducted, very kind of cheap movie shot on 16mm, starring Grizzly Adams himself, Dan Haggerty. Gotta love that guy. This is from the Canadian International Pictures line, sub-label, Vinegar Syndrome. One of my favorite lines that they do a lot of low-budget Canadian films and classic 70s films as well. Abducted was a movie that I'd always heard about. I remember they made a sequel in 1994. Never watched the original. There's another one called Abducted, I think, that's even earlier, from like 1979, directed by, man. Danny Steinman? Is it Steinman? Or is it Joe Zito? I think it's Joe Zito, actually. I mixed Steinman and Zito up. I think it's Joe Zito directed that before he did Blood Rage, if I'm not mistaken. But this one here, 1986, and this is by the director. The director is actually the writer of Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. Fantastic movie. He directed a couple other films as well. The story was interesting how they put this together. There was a true story of a couple kind of backwoods people that kidnapped this woman and whatnot and held her, and he wanted to do that story but kind of changed it around a little bit. And he had this friend his that was an actor who plays Vern, and he's a young man, and he had a lot of problems, and he made him kind of the lead character, one of them. The lead in here, I think she's pretty solid. The acting is kind of weird, kind of unhinged from the lead here. It's almost like one of these moments where it's like it feels cheesy but also really intense and weird. So she's jogging one day in the wilderness, and this kind of outdoorsman, backwoods kind of guy grabs her and says, "You're coming with me." He makes her walk a long time. He threatens her with rape. Obviously, that's an insinuation, and he wants a woman for himself. Dan Haggerty comes along, and we realize he's his father. He's very upset at it, but even when Dan Haggerty is not in the right, he still has this like really charming, like soft-spoken quality about him. If you've ever seen Elves or The Chilling, those aren't great movies. I love Elves, but he has that same kind of demeanor, that soft-spoken stuff, and he comes in here and he promises her safety, all these kind of things like this. And as it progresses, you realize this character in Vern is really mentally unstable, really awful person and annoying. And a lot of this movie is kind of like psychological things of her trying to escape. If this movie would have been made more modernly, I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much. I just think that there's a certain style of films being filmed like this, and maybe almost a sense of like unintentional cheese that kind of helps us move along in a weird way. Overall, I think this is a decent film, Abducted. I don't think it's fantastic. I actually enjoyed the special features a little bit more on it, and that is... What do you hear? Newly scanned and restored in 2K from 35 blow-up negative by Canadian International Pictures. Alternative 133 presentation featuring the unmasked VHS framing of the film. New audio commentary featuring film historian author Amanda Reyes and film critic author J.A. Kurzweil. New introduction to the film by director Boon Collins. Abducted Memories, 24 minutes. I like this. New interview with Collins. That's where he kind of talks about it. Talks about meeting Quentin Tarantino, all this kind of stuff. I found that interesting. Beyond Abducted, Collins reflects on his body of work. Shooting Abducted, 2024. New interview with cinematographer Robert McLaglen. It's shot really well, too, I should mention that. True Crime's the story that inspired Abducted. New video essay by filmmaker and historian Stephen Broomer. Excerpt from Abducted 2, The Reunion. Excerpt from Collins' student film, Kettle of Fish, with optional commentary featuring Collins. Trailers for Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. Abducted, Abducted 2, with optional commentary from Collins. Booklet featuring a new essay by Alexander Heller Nichols, and the new motion picture Purgatory comic strip by Rick Trembles. Yeah, so great release of a solid, decent kind of exploitation film. I don't even know. It's less exploited than one might think. At first I was like, I don't know. And at times it goes there, but she's like in a full like running suit, so like if this was really super sleazy, they'd made her in her underwear the entire time and just like super. She is in her underwear at one point, but I could see this going really exploitative, super exploitative, and it never really crosses the line to where it becomes like an absolute like sleaze fest or something like that. The ending is very reminiscent to me with the train and the backwoods trying to escape of Hunter's blood from the same year, which I love. But yeah, Abducted, check it out. Boy, oh boy, here's another one from Decalogue, and another partner label from Vinegar Syndrome, I should say, and this is from 2017 Vietnamese film, which is rare that we get any Vietnamese films, especially a horror film in the States, and this is KFC. The title and the kind of, this movie had some infamy. You know, I'd heard about it, and people like, the only thing I ever heard about it was, it's gross, it's gross, it's gross, it's weird, oh, I can't believe they're putting that out. And I was like, what the hell is it? I was like, I'm interested in Asian film. I love Asian film, and I like extreme films when they not just extreme for the sake of being extreme. This one maybe crossed that line a little bit, but I did enjoy this film. So boom, we open up, and this is a super bizarre film. We have a couple that are hit on this kind of motorbike, and it seems like a paramedic ambulance. You're not sure. This heavyset guy pulls these two in the car, and he starts trying to CPR the woman, and she's obviously not going to make it, it seems. The driver is scarred. He has half his face burned out, and he has kind of a bad, weird eye. And right away, this heavyset guy starts molesting, and he starts raping this dead woman, and I'm like, oh boy, they are going there. Actually, I shouldn't lie. The opening is of somebody being like murdered and going out in the car. But it changes right there, and you're like, oh shit, it opened up within the first 5-10 minutes. It starts to get pretty extreme, and then we kind of cut back to these young people, these young kids living on the streets, and this big old like street fight and stuff. And the way they shoot this stuff, I think, was pretty effective. And then we're going back and forth to like people that are older, and it took me a while to realize, oh, we're in two different timelines here. We're following the same characters, but we're kind of jumping around and jumping to the past, and you're kind of wondering how all these characters tie in together and everything like that. And they do show you how they do tie together, and it's a real tragic, it's really depressing, it's really sad. But overall, it's just it's a solid low budget kind of crime horror film that crosses the button on crosses the line a little bit on stuff with adding in necrophilia and cannibalism. There is this heavyset kid who is probably the most famous. He's on the cover of the film. I think he stands out the most, and I think like you look at him, he's this little chubby like adorable kid. And you're like, that kid's so cute, but then like he has this menacing dark side that you later find out. I think KFC's pretty cool. I think it's worth watching. If you like independent, low budget horror films and Asian films, I'd check out KFC. It's not going to be like your typical Japanese film or something like this. Vietnam film, I feel like I don't want to say it's like Indonesian because it does cross. It does feel a little Indonesian. You know, I'm trying to compare it to something. It's its own thing, of course, but maybe like Thailand, Indonesian kind of style in a bit. But the director did a couple other films too. This is only extreme fans of extreme cinema need to apply. So yeah, I guess that is kind of a warning here. But I think the structure is pretty well done. I think it's nasty enough that it'll keep people's attention if they like that sort of thing. There's a couple parts where I was like, this is so fucking gross. But overall, I think KFC is definitely worth checking out. It says 2016 here. Really short, too. 69 minutes. Basically, the special features mystery meet interview with filmmaker, the director, the trailers, and then critical essay, interview with Lee Bang Gong. Check it out, man. Good stuff. Recommended. KFC. And that is for the chicken place, man. That is. And that KFC does make an appearance. And, man, maybe I should try mixing Pepsi and Coke and having a sip. But who would think that, right? Okay, the last, technically from 2024, or maybe next week I'll do my top 25 or top 50 or whatever from 2024. But the last one is an Italian film. And how could I not do the Italian film from 2024? Tony Hartman recommended this to me, who's on the top 10 2024 show with Moods, the Moods, 22 Shots of Moods and Horror, so check that out. But he recommended The Well. Now, he said it's like in terms of a classic Italian horror film, and I was like, oh, I'm all in for that. And then, yeah, like I'd say half of this is kind of like the early 2000s kind of, I guess, torture porn boon, like Hostel and Saw kind of style thing that a lot of people really didn't like. And then the second half is kind of your classic Italian horror story about this woman who's called in, like they come from this big company. Giovanni Lamberto Regici plays her father, small role, last role, R.I.P., one of the greats. Italy's whipping boy. This time he whips himself, if that makes sense. That sounds bad, but that's not what I meant. But so basically they run this kind of restoration where they restore art. They call her in, and they have this huge kind of thing. If they don't finish the job, they're gonna get screwed. They're basically gonna lose their whole company because they signed this contract. She has to come in, and this older woman who's still very attractive, takes care of herself. She's like, I need you to restore this painting by this time midnight. She's like, okay, I'll do it. She starts restoring it, immediately has nightmares, starts to have troubles. The painting starts getting creepier and creepier every layer she takes off. Reminds me a bit of Blood Tide, if anybody's seen that from '82 with James Earl Jones and Martin Cove, where, you know, this person's like kind of restoring, taking off these layers of a painting, and underneath is like this ancient god and whatnot. And we kind of have that element here, but at the same time, we have a group of like tourists who are there filming, I believe, that have been kidnapped that she ran into in the very beginning of the film, and they're this kind of being tortured by this big kind of brooding, kind of strong, like kind of slow guy who just is very intense and terrifying, and he's beating these people and torturing them and throwing them down this well, and you're like, what in the hell is happening? How is this connected? And of course it's going to come together. It works really well. There's a couple characters in here I thought were solid. There's a couple moments you're like, I don't know about that, but you know, I'll let it slide. Overall, The Well is a solid Italian horror film. There's some gratuitous violence, there's some good special effects. It's made on a budget. It uses its budget pretty well. The music is really good too. I would recommend checking out The Well. Pretty cool stuff. All right, we're going to get those 1982 movies. I'm not even going to roll that thing. I'm tired of that thing. It's too long. But only one this week. I've covered this film before. This is 1982, of course. Like I said, Sergio Martino, Scorpion with Two Tails. Now, this is the Full Moon Blu-ray. It's not a great release. It's kind of crummy looking. There's 19 minutes of deleted scenes on there that are in Italian only. Now, this is a weird film. Now, I asked Troy when I had him on the show, you know, when we were talking about something, I said, what about the Scorpion with Two Tails this year? And he said it was a mini-series that was kind of cobbled together, and this was the only real release that we have, or real version, I think, that we have that was ever put out here, or something like that along those lines. So it's about an hour, I think 30 minutes, so we got that 20 minutes cut. It's supposed to be a mini-series. It's kind of cobbled together, but it has a bunch of interesting key players in the Italian film world in it. I mean, you got John Saxon, who was in Tenebrae the same year, and he's worked with everybody from Mario Bava, you know, Dario Argento, Umberto Lenzi, Sergio Martino. He's worked with so many Italian greats, Antonio Margheriti. So, like, he's kind of a staple in Italian horror films. No, not Italian himself. It has Claudio Casanelli in it, who's also a Martino kind of regular. It has Paolo Malco in it, who is basically a New York Ripper this same year. So it has a lot of like interesting people. You'll recognize the crazy guy from, of course, Hell of the Living Dead. He's in here. It has Van Johnson in it from Killer Crocodile for the Euro horror fans out there, but he's a classic actor. Music by Fabio Frizzi, but the songs sound like they might have been lifted from, you know, other tracks. Maybe it's cobbled together. Maybe it's from the Cam library. I don't really know. Some of it sounds maybe like original, but it does sound a lot like the Fulci movies in it, but it's the same composer, maybe just like unused tracks, not 100% sure. And the two writers on the film is really weird because it's Ernesto Gastaldi, who's one of the most prolific Italian writers, wrote a lot of gialli and thrillers and things like that, and actually directed a movie in 1980 himself that I talked about. I don't remember the title off the top of my head, but and Dardano Sacchetti, who is more in the supernatural stuff. And so these two are the other prolific writers, never really worked together. And I don't think Dardano Sacchetti really wrote for Martino, right? So it's just weird. It's just a weird cobbled together thing. Basically what happens is John Saxon is an archaeologist or some sorts, and they're kind of digging this tomb of sorts or something like that. And he gets murdered. His wife hears about it. She wants to go look into it. Her father runs the company that John Saxon was working for. He's also going down there. That's Van Johnson. So they all go down there, and they realize that there's some sort of murder thing going on. It turns out there's a bunch of drugs that were hidden in this one of the boxes. So there's a bunch of drug dealers looking for drugs, and there's also a bunch of people looking for what the secret treasure was in here. It gets real weird. At points it's supernatural. At points it's very giallo-like. At points it's like very crime-oriented shootouts. Just a weird hodgepodge movie. I wish there was a nice remaster. I wish there was a story that broke everything down here and explained everything, but I don't know if people want to go through the effort on this one. Scorpion with the Two Tails. I like it. I don't think it's great. I think it's a mess. I think it's interesting. The ending is really fucking stupid at one point. Love John Saxon. He's solid in here. Paula Malco's good. The lead in here, I don't know her from anything else, but she's also good. It's got that classic thing where it's like, it's an old kind of ancestral thing, you know, hundreds of years ago, and then they look, it's like, that looks just like you. Bullshit ancestral stuff like that. But yeah, that is a Scorpion with Two Tails. Feels kind of, they definitely like an Egyptian mummy bend to it. But I had 19 minutes of deleted scenes that I think probably should have stayed in the movie. But overall, it's decent. It's not great. If you're an Italian film completist, check it out. I probably rate it higher than I should, but that's Scorpion with Two Tails. All right, last but not least is the Patreon pick, and this one is called Fool's Parade. This is directed by the guy who did Devil's Brigade, which is a really fun movie. The guy did a bunch of John Wayne films as well. Fool's Parade has an amazing cast. It's got Jimmy Stewart in it. It's got George Kennedy. It's got Strother Martin. It's got Kurt Russell. It's got Mike Kellen, Ann Baxter. Just a tremendous group of actors in here that do a tremendous freaking job. There's also some other familiar faces in here that you'd recognize. This takes place period piece during, you know, kind of the Great Depression. Everybody's incredibly poor during this kind of deal here, and good old Jimmy Stewart has been in prison for 40 years. You know, he always plays kind of a kind-hearted good guy, except he, in some of the westerns, he can play kind of a bad guy. What was that? A Big Country or something on a country. He's not a great guy in that one. He's really good in it, though. So he is a very, very, like, still a very good-natured person. He's got one fake eye, and at points he takes it out, and him and Kurt Russell think they could tell the future. Kurt Russell is really young in this, kind of plays young whippersnapper good as well. Love seeing him interact with Strother Martin and Jimmy Stewart. Strother Martin is fantastic in this movie. I love Strother Martin. Strother Martin is one of the best character actors of all time, and he's great in this. So Jimmy Stewart, Strother Martin, Kurt Russell are all three prisoners that got released, and basically the captain is George Kennedy, right? He's this evil son of a bitch. On Sundays, he's a Sunday school teacher, but in reality, he hates sin. He's one of those horrible people that Jimmy Stewart quotes him as, you know, God uses good men and good men use God, and he's one of the bad men use God. And that's why good men are used by God and bad men use God, and he's one of the bad men. So basically he wants these guys out of his cities. He wants them out of chance. Jimmy Stewart has a check for $25,000 from working for 40 years. He never spent a dime, and he wants to cash this check. They want to go open their own store, and Strother Martin is carrying around this book because they're opening the store, and he's like, I gotta make my inventory, but he keeps picking up garbage and being like, ooh, crushed tomatoes, and he writes it down. It's so charming and endearing. I caught myself laughing a lot. Also, I should mention, the Big Lebowski is in here. David Huddleston, and he's like the bank owner, and he doesn't want this criminal to get $25,000 in cash, right? So he's going to have Captain Counsel, George Kennedy, who plays a real creep, like I said, take him out. But he's not going to do it by himself. He's going to get Mike Kellen to help him out here. Mike Kellen, for you horror fans, is in Just Before Dawn, Sleepaway Camp. But he's in a great film called The Incident. And he's also in Midnight Express. Really good character actor. Great stuff. So basically, they're going to try to kill good old Jimmy Stewart. There's a lot of train action in here. People jumping trains, people on the trains. I love trains and movies. Big fan. See Emperor of the North if you haven't. So we have all this kind of going on, but it's a period piece as well, and they kind of go cross country to try to survive, and they realize they got to bring this check back, and it gets complicated and everything, and they meet a odd assortment of characters, and Ann Baxter is really funny, patriotic prostitute, which is one of my favorite alliterations this week, I guess. But I thought this movie was endlessly charming, and it's not lost on me that, of course, Strother Martin was what we have is failure to communicate. Of course, course, the kind of the warden in Cool Hand Luke, and one of the prisoners was George Kennedy. Now it's reversed. We got Captain Council as George Kennedy with his dog and his white shoes tracking these boys down, and Sterling Martin is the criminal. Just a great cast, man. I love old 70s movies, 60s movies where they have these amazing casts and the actors get to have fun and just be weird and bizarre and chew the scenery. I love it. And Jimmy Stewart is so damn charming. You know, I love these people have so much screen presence and charisma. Kurt Russell, he's fine in it. He's good. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. But, you know, he's a young kid. He gets outshined. He gets outworked by these guys. But these guys get so much more to do. But I would highly recommend this movie. Back in the day when rated G movies still could have some guy get shot in his head and still have a prostitute scene without any nudity or anything like that. It just like rated G was different back then. But I love Fool's Parade. Never had a Blu-ray. There is some, I think, imports that are floating around. You can rent it streaming. It is in HD at places. I think it played on Turner Classic Movies before in HD. So really check out Fool's Parade. Highly recommended. A lot of fun. And basically, I got to work on my inventory. There's so many good moments here. He's like, oh, no. He grabs like the bourbon. Sterling Martin starts writing it down. And it's a lot different from, it's kind of similar to his role in Hard Times where he kind of plays a lovable drunk, but even more silly. And, I just love him. It's a far cry, it's not too far, I guess, from Wild Bunch and Ballad of Cable Hogue. More in line with Ballad of Cable Hogue, where he plays kind of like a dim-witted guy. But, there's a underlining meanness in him in Wild Bunch, of course, and everybody in that movie, to be honest. But I would highly recommend Fool's Parade. Great stuff. All right, guys. Questions, comments, and concerns. Ken Coakley. I've been catching up with the horror that was released this past year. In your recent episode, you mentioned Mr. Crockett, so I gave it a try and liked it. Elvis Noslasco looked kind of like the late Robert Doki. He also has a cool first name, but he also brings a manic energy to his role. He also initially came across as a hero by killing abusive parents. Felt bad for the first kid. He had a right to be safe in his own home. It reminded me of Maniac 2, Mr. Robbie. Of course, me too. In which he kills abusive fathers. But Elvis was great at bringing a levity to the story. I liked his friendship song. I was singing along to it later in the film. I also watched Carved right after Mr. Crockett. This was like a gory sequel to Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. They should have called it Attack of the Killer Pumpkin. Only in this film can they romanticize Bryan Adams. I was never a Bryan Adams fan, but he co-wrote a heavy metal song with the heavy metal band Cronus. That wasn't bad. I watched about 5 minutes of it in October because I watched a different film that took place or around October for 31 days. I don't know why I stopped watching it back then. I must have been put off by the stoner character. I also watched Handling the Dead. That was a little disappointing because I thought it was going to be a zombie or a vampire film, but it was a slow burn. It was a slow burn, all right. A very slow burn. I agree. Good film. Couple great moments. Just a little bit too much of a non-thing to like. On the subject of Badlands, I haven't seen it in a while, but I did like it. I had the Criterion Blu-ray before I was hospitalized and may still have it. Back in the 70s, Martino was typecast as a creep who hooked up or tried to hook up with underage girls. He famously played a creep opposite Jodie Foster in The Little Girl Lives Down the Lane. He also starred opposite Linda Blair in a TV movie called Sweet Hostage in 1975. I'm a huge Warren Oates fan and thought he was great in Badlands. For some reason, I forgot it was Warren Oates who played Sissy Spacek's father. I kept remembering the role as played by Rip Torn or Harry Dean Stanton, two other actors I like a lot. Yeah, I mean, Harry Dean Stanton and Warren Oates were in a handful of movies together. Toon Lane Black Tie, Cockfighter, Dillinger, So, yeah, it's not unheard of that one of those guys could switch back and forth. I could see that. Now I have a few questions. Are you going to do a top 10 of 2024? It was a pretty decent year for horror. This past year with Smile 2, Terrifier 3, Nosferatu, etc. doing well at the box office. Yeah, I think I will. In the background, I noticed a VHS of Salem's Lot. Is it the miniseries or the European theatrical cut? Man, I really wanted to look for you. Where's it at? Oh, I know it's not in alphabetical order because, is it the double tape or not? It's whatever. It's the generic tape that was ever released. I never actually got a chance to watch the tape. I watched my Blu-ray, and Salem's Lot was not a favorite of mine growing up. I actually did not see it until later in life. But I've had the VHS for years, so I don't know where it's at here. I'm not seeing it where directly. I know, right? I'm still wasting time looking at the VHS. You're watching me look for VHS now. That's not good entertainment. That's not good family fun. But there we go. Sorry about that. Do you think Nosferatu will get any Oscar nominations? I hope, well, even though I haven't seen it. I will be able to watch it when it starts streaming because it's on Peacock Plus. I saw an interview with Robert Eggers, and he said that Bill Skarsgård was originally considered for a Hutter role that Nicholas Hoult ended up playing. I don't know. Maybe wardrobe or something, or set design, maybe something like that. Have you seen Shadow of the Vampire? If yes, so what do you think of it? I thought Shadow of the Vampire is pretty good stuff. I reviewed it here years ago, but great stuff. Nick Moore from Belgium, quadruple yay, and thumbs up, Infinity Squared for your 400th episode. I hope you get to make 4,000 episodes, Dave. I don't think so, guys. I never quite connected with the cell, but perhaps I was wrong. If both you and Arrow say it's a good film, who am I to disagree with? I mean, it's your opinion. You don't have to like every movie. Incubus seems very intriguing. It might be a fine companion piece for Wes Craven's Deadly Blessing. 2 incubi, if that's the correct plural form of incubus, for the price of 1. Questions. Do the Oscars, Golden Globes hold any sway over your choice of movies? Not really. I'm glad that movies, if I like them and they do well, great. But I don't watch any movies because it's an Oscars or a Golden Globes. I mean, back in the day, it might have had some importance. It's definitely worth noting and worth mentioning. Would you ever use the substance to be younger again? I don't know. I can't trust my younger self anymore, so no. What would you do? Well, it's not younger self. It's the best version of yourself. But if you're sharing the same kind of... No, I don't think so. Not after I saw what happened. What would you do if FBI zombies raided your house? Try to save my movies. I hope you remain safe with those fires popping up in the U.S. God bless. It's nowhere near me. But I appreciate the sentiment. This comment smells of death. Congratulations on 400 episodes, Dave. When you include all the horror year discussions, interviews, and various other reviews that you've done, it's one hell of a body of work that you've built up over the years. I've been getting a chuckle out of seeing some of the films that 88 has been putting out recently. What was that? Gara's Guts box set, Terry Ishii's Torture Sleaze and the Roman Porno. The UK sure has come a long way from the video nasties era. Poor old Mary Whitehouse must be spinning in a grave from all this freely available filth. Good. Let her spin deeper and deeper until she drills herself straight to hell. No, against censorship. But yeah. It's awesome. I think it's fucking great. Zach Nolan, I'll be here for the next 400. Thanks. Do Movie-thon, week 4 frickin' 100. Nicely done, dude. Thank you. And also, I know you've been at it for a long time, too. I appreciate what you do. Martin VP, love to sell such an underrated movie. Only saw it once. Need to see it again soon. Thanks for the great episode. No problem. MJ, thanks for the videos and consistency. It's awesome work. I liked Running on Karma a lot. Johnny is one of my favorite directors, and the themes for some that I enjoy stories exploring. Yeah. It was cool. It's interesting. What the flick? At 16:52, you say that they start to butt heads. For a second, I thought you were going to say they start to butt fuck. I busted out laughing before you could even finish your sentence. That's where my brain goes. Hey, maybe it'd be a more interesting movie. Jason Bovey, congratulations on 400 shows. Your dedication to passion for cinema is beyond impressive. Thank you. I appreciate it. Ilk Vomit, love Killer Constable, one of Chang King Tai's best performances ever. That's a great film. Yeah, he's awesome in it. Gray News, it gives me a little smile. Thank you. Way up, dude. Nice thumbs up and everything. I appreciate it. Angelo, The Cell and Incubus are 2 great horror films. As for Pieces, I remember being freaked out watching it for the first time. How did you feel, James? Great review as always. The first time I watched it, I probably was just watching it on a crummy DVD and was like, that was weird. I didn't know, I don't remember initial. I talk about it in the 1982 Pieces video we did, but that's probably my sentiment was probably didn't leave a lasting impression until later, and I really liked it. Darnia, congrats with 400. Thanks for giving me something to look forward to week after week. Happy 2025. Thank you very much, guys. I guess we're gonna get out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.